My biggest fear and the biggest problem I think we have in this country today is that people do not remember how bad things were. The panic, the anxiety.
It was the biggest thing since the Depression in the 1930s.
The number of homes facing foreclosure has jumped 57%.
This will be a time of anxiety for Americans worried about their mortgages and their homes.
Economists worry the housing slump will plunge the broader economy into a recession.
And let's do whatever it takes to keep the promise of America alive in our time.
I was always looking for that American dream. That's becoming an American nightmare.
So Rick's business was gangbusters. We were in concrete. We were the ground breakers. You know, we got in there, we did the slab in the beams, so we felt all the new building coming in. When somebody new was wanting to build a house, we were there ready to go. And, you know, business was just growing and growing. We had people just knocking every day, and he was having to turn business away, and I was like, oh. There was a builder that we dealt primarily with, and, you know, he said, this market can't sustain forever. And then I said, well, even if, you know, something was to happen, we're good. We have an outstanding reputation. People are gonna stop building homes. Yeah, it didn't work that way. And I found out I was pregnant, and then the market died. Everything fell apart.
I was working at Miami-Dade County Public Schools. So to apply for the mortgage with DHI Mortgage, I had to provide all of my income. Back then, I probably was close to $36,000 gross. Upon their review, they noticed that I really did not make enough money to qualify for a mortgage loan through DHI or any other mortgager. And they was like, well, we can state your income. And I was like, okay. All I saw was keys, new house, my kids had their own bedroom, done.
I am the president and CEO of HOPE. We are a 30-year-old not-for-profit organization that fights housing discrimination. You know, I don't know if they would know that they were targeted because of their race. I think the first piece is being an educated consumer and knowing that you're being offered a predatory loan.
In the box office, which is good.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Well, if you were black in this area, you were 3 times more likely to get a predatory/discriminatory loan. If you were Hispanic, 4 times. The city is suing Wells Fargo because they issued discriminatory loans, and those discriminatory loans hurt the city. I think we have to pursue it. I think we have to continue to fight, because otherwise the banks just realize they can do whatever they want to, and then they can drag it out and it'll go away.
How they were approaching it to many of us, that, you know, you get into this mortgage, which will be 2 years fixed. And what they will tell you is before the 2 years are over, try to re-qualify for a new loan.
I think there were some people that got caught up that didn't understand the adjustable mortgages. And in an adjustable mortgage, a family, say, bought a property for $1,500 for the first year, or the first 2 years or 3 years, and then in the third year, whatever, The adjustment came and they now owe $3,500. I don't think lenders at that time, some of the mortgage brokers may not have been explaining it to them properly, and I felt sorry for those people.
So being in HR, we had to look at duplicated positions, duplicated roles, then we had to look by seniority. After we already identified positions that we had to let go due to the budget, then I got a call. And I was like, okay, they calling me. Maybe they want to check my report. But no, that was the call for me. And I was eventually let go. So I started using my savings to pay the mortgage and to pay my association fees monthly. And as my savings kept depleting, the stress came on, like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna make the next month? Okay, the next month, okay. It was real. I mean, I didn't have any help, no one to talk to, and thinking about it like this. My mom never owned a home, so she didn't understand. My grandmother did own a home, but it was no mortgage, so she didn't understand either. So who am I talking to? My kids, they didn't understand that. When they knew is when they came and repossessed my car. I was getting ready to take my kids to school, we walked out the house, and my car was gone. That's when they know, Mommy, something's not right.
I think one thing that I came away with very quickly was there's not a whole lot of difference between somebody making 6 figures and somebody down at the bottom end of the pay scale when both of them lose their money and they don't have any savings.
Until astronomers found even more moons orbiting Saturn and Jupiter.
I was a real estate appraiser. I was self-employed, and I did that for 13 years. We had a very nice lifestyle. We were doing very well. I mean, I was making in the mid 6 figures, 100,000 range.
I mean, our house was nice, and we were doing well, but we were not extravagant, and we had our savings and our emergency fund and stuff, and we're not big spenders, and so we could easily ride out all the other downturns, but this one.
I knew that there was going to be some kind of correction in the market. I didn't realize it was going to be as big and as devastating as it was. I noticed that the orders for appraisal requests were coming in slower and slower, and then when the crash hit, it's like things dried up overnight.
The increase in the mortgage payments combined with no way out and losing their jobs, all those things would contribute to the inability to make the mortgage payment. And if you stop making your mortgage payments, sooner or later the bank's going to want the house back.
It's Mitch's land, and he had an old single wide trailer there, and he had his 2 kids and I had mine, and we were talking about it. We moved all together, and one day he and I went out and came back with a new car and a new manufactured home to be put on the lot, and told the kids we were going to be moving into this house, and measured it out and got everything all set up for this new gorgeous house that we had just purchased. It was so exciting, and we were building our decks and planning, and Christmases were big with big trees, and it was just great. Everything was going so well. And then I went to Reno, Nevada to help my mother, who was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. I'm an only child, so I'm the only one that could go and take care of her. She was going through chemotherapy and radiation and not doing well with either one. She finally went into a coma, and my mom was gone within 3 hours. And then I had to plan her funeral and bury my mother. And I came back to Georgia and I looked for job after job after job after job. And so we were living on one income with 2 boys. It got hard. It got really hard. We got behind on our mortgage payments. And I was in a very bad state of depression and looked as much as my mind would let me. And then I would crawl into bed and hide under the covers until I got a job finally. And I used to do the rob Peter to pay Paul thing, pay the electricity this month and pay the mortgage next month. I didn't know at that time that if you send a partial payment, they don't have to accept it. They can send it back to you. And I just juggled bills for as long as I could, and then I missed 3 mortgage payments.
I called the bank and I said, okay, we're not going to be able to make our mortgage payments. What can we do? And that's when they replied and said, in order for us to help you, you need to stop making your mortgage payments and you need to be behind by 3 months. So we followed their advice.
And this was totally against our philosophy and our personalities to just basically, well, just not
stop making our mortgage.
To not be responsible, you know, hold ourselves accountable for what we owed.
Once the 3 months came, we applied for the financial aid programs. Took them over 10 months to come back with an answer, and the answer was no. So by that time, we were a year behind in our payments, and there was no recovery.
We were sunk.
Yeah. When I finished the house, I appraised it for $450,000. It was worth about $170,000 when we finally got foreclosed on.
Our mortgage was, from refinancing, $4,300 a month. And it was way, way, way beyond. I mean, it was crazy. We got almost a year from non-payment. But, you know, I had friends that were able to stay in their house for 2.5 years without paying mortgage before the bank actually moved forward because there was such an onslaught. The things roll in and you say, can you give us another month? You know, what can you do for us? Can you know, help us out? You know, we're not gonna be able to make it this month, but I can give you a little. We'll catch up, you know. Here you are, you're paying all this time, and you know, you miss 1 month and they're like, yeah, we're shutting you down. I get it, but in the same breath, you know, it's horrible to have to hear.
We jumped through every single hoop that Wells Fargo threw at us, every time. Wells Fargo was saying they'd help. They were advertising you could get your mortgage amounts reduced if you refinanced. They said, send us this money and we'll rewrite your loan and make you a lower payment. And so Mitch borrowed the money and they cashed the check and they had our money, and I had 2 more weeks to get the rest of the monthly payment together, and I was ready to pay it when the deputy showed up on our door and told us they sold the house on the courtroom steps, and our next door neighbor had purchased our house. And the first thing I did was call the law office that was supposed to be helping us. And she said, don't answer the door. And I said, too late. Mitch has already gone out to meet him because he was someone Mitch grew up with. And he handed Mitch the notice. We were told we had 48 hours to get out of the house. And it was like cutting a piece of my heart out.
I think this whole ordeal has, you know, strengthened me to put on a good facade to let people know that I got this and it's okay. And it's really not. We've actually lost our home. We actually had to classify as homeless. We actually had to. I had to go to Dade County Public Schools and list my kids as homeless. By doing that, they were able to stay in their school.
We were into the house for just shy of $500,000. You know, after non-payment for so long, you know, they send the notices. If you don't pay, the threatens, you know, if you don't pay, we're gonna foreclose. If you don't pay, we're gonna foreclose. We've started foreclosures. And then when you get served, the paper from whatever sheriff or whoever that comes and brings you the paper that says you have to go to court. And then you go to court. And you have to bring your family and your kids in strollers.
Well, I think in the office, we all thought it was horrible. I mean, you know, nobody wants to take anything from anybody. If you're a decent person, you want that person to be whole. But if you're given a responsibility, your responsibility is to execute what the law says. And that's what being an administrative office. So here we are foreclosing. Here we have judges that feel the same way we do, and we're processing these loans. Now, some of the people, I was happy to see them, you know. But 90% of it, you know, is you just have to do it. That's, you know, and the people that got caught in the net that maybe shouldn't have, they had ample time, some of them, to get out if they could. But it's just a nasty business, and nobody feels good about that.
And the judge was so understanding. I think we were in and out probably in 15 minutes. I think he gave us 2 months to be out. You know, you could tell this was not his favorite day either. We had to walk away from everything. We couldn't pay the mortgage. We certainly couldn't pay credit cards. You know, we couldn't pay electricity. We couldn't pay water. You know, prior to the date of having to leave, you know, we spent a month in the house almost without electricity. Those were the worst days.
So I want people to think about what the economy looks like today compared to just a few years ago, 10 years ago. You know, as you do your daily drive, there's breweries, there's restaurants on every single corner. But if it's a recession or if it's just a little bit of a downturn, how quickly things will turn badly because a consumer will start to pull back a little bit. And when the financial crisis comes, and believe me, it's coming again, we're going to be in a much worse state than we were in 2008. And that's something that I really urge us all to consider very carefully.
It seems like everything just, you know, we never learn from our mistakes. We just kind of keep, as a society, we just kind of keep repeating them over and over again. And they happen differently, but, you know, it just seems like it's the same cycles keep coming and going.
Oh, I see it happening again. Especially around here. Building is crazy right now. Developments popping up everywhere. They're just building, building, building. And I worry that, you know, it's the same scenario just happening again 10 years later. You know, like everybody suddenly forgot that all this happened.
We have a crazy stock market that's out of control in ways that are dwarfed by what happened just a few years ago in the crash. And there's no good explanation for that.
Although we haven't got a bubble in the overall economy, we've got some sort of frothy or bubbly sort of housing markets. I worry about when I hear people say that they think that the financial system can never have another major crisis, because I suspect we'll have another one. It just won't be housing.
check. I just realized after looking for whatever opportunities, were available that there weren't any that were viable to support the family. But we had been doing the music mission part-time already, had all the equipment in place, everything was basically ready to go. All we had to do was go out and do this. I remember sitting our family down. At the time we had 7 children, we now have 8, and I said, okay, I think that I need to do this music ministry full-time. I think that's the only viable thing that we can do to make a living right now. But I'm not going to do it on my own. And they said, yeah, let's do it. So
everybody
was on
voted
board.
Positive. That was February of 2012.
Yeah.
We've been going ever since.
For a few years we held on as long as we possibly could, but by the end of 2011, it was evident that I could no longer make a living as a real estate appraiser anymore. So I had to find a way to make a living and support my family. During the concert, I tell our story in a very, truncated way. And by the way, this is my daughter Marissa. She is my 19-year-old daughter, my second oldest. She just also happens to be my background singer. Because she's my daughter, I don't have to pay her, so that's kind of nice.
It gives other people just the chance to be part of what we're doing. And a lot of people have told us that they love hearing about our story and they're just amazed at what we do.
It took meeting other people across the country that went through the same thing for me to finally realize that it wasn't just me.
This is the most beautiful thing. This is the most beautiful thing.
My husband called his older sister, and he's like, I don't know what we're gonna do. We're gonna be living in our, my car and his truck. And she said, hang on, and she called another sister, and that sister offered us here. And so here we are, 7 years later, and I'm gonna go buy paint and try to make it real. I have to accept that this is where I live, and it's art. It's not where I would choose.
We bounced around. We moved a lot. And right before we had moved back in with my mom, I decided that, something had to change. So I went back to school. Rick feared that, it was going to take too much. But the income that we had, I was able to qualify for a lot of assistance for school. So essentially, my school was paid. I didn't have to pay for school. I knew I wanted to go healthcare because it would bring stability. Eventually, there would be some sort of, job that wasn't going to go anywhere.
But let's say it was two years officially as a recession, but the unemployment rate stayed quite high for another 3 or 4 years, and certainly there was the remains of a lot of financial wreckage from people who had gone into debt and still owed an awful lot more money than they could earn.
We've talked about a lot of things since losing the house. We've talked about bankruptcy, about that might give us a fresh start. I have read and talked to several people who have gone through bankruptcy who are able to buy a house in a couple of years. Another thing we've talked about is divorce, because that would both make us head of households and we could file better income taxes. There's so many things that cross your mind when you go through this situation that you would never in a million years thought of. Never in a million years would I thought of divorcing somebody just to try to help our financial situation. Would just totally was not how either one of us were raised. You don't throw in the towel. You keep fighting, you keep working, and you do it. You just keep going.
It was a lot of uncertainty when we actually had to leave. Like, Mommy, where are we going? Where are we going? I can't take my such and such. I'm like, no, you can't take that. In Majorca, you have resources, you know, you have families that are whole. In Liberty City, you have broken families. You have people getting shot, killed, just you name it. This is almost like a forgotten place. It was a transition that just happened so very fast, and I don't know if I was prepared enough for it, let alone my kids.
As a family, we did everything we could to make the kids not feel like there was a giant crisis going on. So, you know, you do every little thing you can to make that money stretch. Learn how to save the seeds from the plants you grow so that you can plant them. You know, see where you can barter. The lady down the street would take the vegetable peelings and things for eggs. Thankfully, the place that we rented had some land, so I had a huge garden. I taught myself how to can, did a lot of research, started doing jams and jellies just to try it out, and then realized that you can pretty much put anything you want up. And if you buy a bag of beans, so a bag of beans is, you know, 99 cents, and you can make 16 jars of beans. You're saving 15 bucks at the grocery store. You just move forward, doing the best you can. I don't need what I thought I needed.
So McLean Stevenson is like a regular in here now?
You know, we're building our emergency fund back up and our, you know, 6-month living fund and all that stuff. But yeah, there are times when we're putting stuff back at the grocery store and kids have to wait for stuff. They have, you know, I've got holes in my shoes and, you know, that sort of thing. But that's the way it used to be in America. You wore stuff out, you appreciated what you had, and you used it up. So we're raising our kids with that mentality, partly through our choice and partly through necessity. But some days the food gets a little tight. That's our biggest expense.
I sleep in girldom. So girldom is just the back part of the trailer with the 4 bunks, and there's no room for anything but 4 people.
It's small.
It's small for 10 people and a cat. And seriously, the cat takes up more space than the rest of us.
It's harder than life in a house to some point, but it's just an adventure. Every day there's something new. So it feels like there's no such thing as routine anymore. We started out wanting to have a routine and trying to do routine, but after life kicked in, that kind of just all fell apart, and now every single day it's just like, oh, what's going to happen next?
The idea of having another house payment is not something that I really feel comfortable doing. I mean, the freedom that we have now with no house payment and the real freedom that we have just touring around the country, that's priceless. I don't know how to explain that. It's not a tangible thing, but it's something that just, every time we think about letting go of that, it was like, we love doing what we're doing.
Some people think that buying a house is the best investment you can make and that everybody should own one. I think that's too strong a generalization. I think what people need to do is they need to figure out, they need to have a good household budget. They need to know what their fixed costs are outside the house. They need to think about the probability of losing a job or suffering diminished hours. They need to think about how much financial cushion they have and recognize that that loan is a big commitment, and it's one that doesn't go away if you get sick, that it bears therefore some risk, as well as the benefit of living in your own house or the benefit of a longer-term capital gain. So be careful with the loan.
We do hope we can buy a house. I talked to a realtor, and she had her lending guy call us, and he said, well, your credit score has to be above 510. It's a minimal that our lenders will do. And ours is, I've just finally gotten it over 400. It's just taken a long, long time. Mitch thinks I'm a little nuts, but I go through the sale paper every Wednesday like clockwork and write down what we use so that that's what we go and get. We don't get extras. And I've learned how to pay my bills so that they're paid on time, but they spread across 3 paychecks. We struggle, but we're making it. It'll be all right. That's what we keep telling each other. It'll be all right.
Yeah, we definitely want to buy a house again. It's no fun giving your money away to somebody else. And I feel like that's all we're doing. We're thinking about it. You know, that's the stage we're at. What would it take to get there again? To save up the money for down payment. Whether the credit's good enough at this point. And the fear that the bottom will drop out again. I don't want to ever go through that again.
Recovery for us was probably slower because the problem was unnaturally larger. But the city's turning the corner, and we started to see businesses open. We see house sales now. We see families moving in, and so we see the labor that we put in, the added officers, the enhancement to parks, the business recruitment, the economic development. We see that stuff starting to pay off, but it's just happening slower here. It's happening slower here, but I'm happy to say we're moving forward.
I think that if we all continue to do our part, and that's the lending institutions, the housing counseling agencies, and even people, educating themselves about, you know, their credit and credit worthiness and what its value is, as well as home ownership. I want to believe that we can all do better and that we can all succeed, and I look forward to watching the advances.
I do all I can to teach and expose my kids to financial literacy. They both have an account with the credit union. They're able to deposit money. They can watch their money. They know when they go buy things with their debit card, do you have enough money for that? And if not, let's put that card up. We can't have it. Save your money. I tell them to save their money. Focus on, you know, making a better way out. Don't take the same road that I have.
I haven't seen any signs of the real estate bubble bursting on a national scale. I think there are some local markets where there might be some price declines, particularly if interest rates rise. I don't think there's any national problem at this point. But there are an awful lot of economists and an awful lot of thoughtful commentators looking at the disparity of income distributions. The numbers on income disparity are strikingly large, the disparities are, and they seem to be getting worse. And to the extent that everybody views homeownership as the fulfillment of the American dream, you have a large chunk of the population that will never be able to afford that part of the American dream.
For the last 2 years, I've been raising awareness about what affordable housing really is. And that encompasses both rental and home ownership, but primarily for rental housing. For far too long, when people say affordable housing, they think of only blacks and people who are poor. But in the 21st century, that crosses all income and gender lines. What I do is try to change that narrative to say, hey, they used to say, oh, if you go to school, you can make it. I've done that. I've gone to school. Matter of fact, I went for my bachelor's and my master's. Now what? Do I have to get a doctorate to be able to live here affordably? That makes no sense.
So is homeownership a major part of the American dream? I think it is, to be sure. And to some extent, if you've got the financial security to buy a house and take on those financial commitments, that means in some sense that you have made it. So it's not the house that means you've made it, but it's your ability to finance the house that means you've made it and you've attained part of the American dream.
You can choose to let it take you over, and you can choose to essentially be done, or you can see down the road and see that, you know, in 5 years you don't know what's going to happen. Tomorrow you don't know what's going to happen. So to give up hope now isn't going to put you anywhere.
I get flashback of the boom, but I'm hoping that we learned something from both sides. I'm hoping that home buyers learned, don't buy what you can't afford. I'm hoping lenders said, look, where's your 20%?
I do worry about my finances, yes. Especially living in South Florida, who's not? Everything is overpriced and we're extremely underpaid. And I'm actually really scared to go back to home ownership if it's not affordable. If I can't pay that mortgage in one check, I don't want it. You couldn't even give it to me. Given the times we're in, that's not even realistic. I was always an advocate for home ownership. I was always looking for that American dream. So I don't want the American dream because they didn't create that for me. So I want my dream.
I have gone from somebody who saw through rose-colored glasses to kind of have a gray tint now. I'm just, I don't know, you know, just take a step back and reevaluate it and think about it. I hope so. So does Monroe. Monroe wants his own house, but we do hope we can buy a house and have some freedom to have a garden and do the things that we used to do.
I think many people that do define themselves by their career or finances or big house or car, when forced to, can come up with a new identity. And I will say that one takeaway that I found, and I use this as I meet with people, is that oftentimes they're happier on the other side.
As an appraiser, I mean, I made a lot of money. The nice things about the fact that I was able to make a lot of money and we were able to have all this, you know, a nice lifestyle and everything, you realize that that's not what makes you happy. The sad thing is that as an appraiser, I was stuck in my office for 16 hours a day and I never saw my family. Now, I'm able to be with my family full time and be able to, you know.
Oh, and that makes you happy.
Yeah, well, it does. I mean, I'm actually less stressed now than I used to be. She can attest to that.
Yes, definitely.
But then, you know, if you step back and you look at the big picture,
yeah,
I think all of us are happier than when we were in that other lifestyle.
To me, the American dream isn't so much about having, you know, this perfect life. You know, I can be a background singer, I can travel the world, I can be with my family all the time while I'm doing that. And just the fact that we've got that freedom, that to me is the real American dream.
Hi everyone, we are in Wisconsin. My mother-in-law is taking a little break from the road and we've got a little family update.
We are having baby number 9.
Yes, that's not donuts and cheesecake and cheese curds.
It might be cheese curds.
I'm finally have my credit scores creeping up slowly, so that's been really good and helpful. It makes me feel a lot better, and I'm leaving the options open. With the amount of money I get per month I am not sure what I can afford, so I've also been kind of looking around to see if I can find a job when I get back and go back to work, at least part-time, if not full-time. It's just the way life is. 61 and back to work, you know?
I am surviving the aftermath of the foreclosure. I am currently looking for a safe and decent, affordable place to rent, but due to my income and the pay disparities that runs rampant in South Florida, I just have not been able to find a place to rent. I am what you call priced out.
Hi everyone, Heather Little here. Since the video, my husband and I have really worked hard on taking a step forward to being healthier. We have combined lost 110 pounds, so that's really exciting to be able to move forward and take time for us to be better.